The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Thrilled to be here with you this morning, and we are going to be with you live for the next 2 hours. You know, I love Wednesday, and today's a very exceptional day, and I'm going to tell you why for a lot of different reasons. So the last 2 days, Cecilia Knight and I have been on a tour of some of the card offices that are up in the Bay Area of California, up around San Francisco, but lower and west of San Francisco, I guess. And we just got to meet some of the most amazing young people. I'm going to get choked up doing therapy with kiddos on the spectrum. It was amazing. We got to meet some of the most interesting and beautiful children that I have ever seen. And I'll tell you, some of the most inspirational parents. It was a really good time. It was a fabulous time. We just finished. We did a talk last night that ended at 10 o'clock last night in Beaver Creek, California, and we were able to get a couple of hours sleep before we headed out on planes in different directions, very like in the middle of the night this morning. And today happens to be Cecilia's birthday, so we're wishing her happy travels as she makes her way home on her birthday. But so I flew in this morning, and it's raining. And rain makes for bumpy. So it was a very bumpy flight coming in, like the bumpiest thing I've ever been on. And then had to make my way across the valley to get here from the airport just in time. I just got here a few minutes ago. And what I found upon arrival is that Dr. Granpeche has been called away. So you're a little bit stuck with me for this first hour, but that's okay because I know we're going to talk about some things. There's a question that one of our viewers had written in, and I'm going to read it. I'm not qualified to answer it, but I'm going to read it because I promised him that we would, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get to it next week. But any questions that you guys have that are of a nature that I can answer, now is the time to be writing that in, because we are going to be here live. A lot of times I get you somebody else who can answer your questions that's a BCBA, and I don't have that for you today because I was on a bumpy plane and not looking at my email. And I apologize. But you have me, and you know what I always say, that we hold hands, we do this together, right? Si se puede, right? So there are lots of different ways that you can interact with us. I'm going to have Traven show you some of the different ways that you can connect. Find the way that works best for you. We do, while he's showing you those things, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com, and when you go there, you'll see it's a brand new website, and there are lots of interesting things to do on that website, including look at a lot of our library of videos. And a lot of the stuff that you could do before is there, just might look a little bit different. So at the top of the page, there's a red button. It's sort of a reddish orange button, and it says live. And for some of you, on some of your browsers, when you go to the page, if we're live, it just automatically pops up live. For some of you, you need to click it, depending on the browser, right? Now at the bottom of the page, it says chat. And if you click on that, it opens up a window, and you can write there, you just type and hit enter, and then it sends itself to me here, and that's all free and anonymous. So feel free to do that as well. That's just some of the stuff that you can do on that page, but there are lots of things to, you know, look at the different playlists and the different sets of videos that we have on there. Okay, but it's not the only way that you can get in contact with us, as Traven is showing you the other ways. So please check it out. I've got Facebook open live here, and in a little while we'll open it up to your questions. But I did promise, we have a viewer who's been with us for a long time, and a good viewer who writes in questions on a regular basis, but he said, I haven't asked in a long time, so I'm just going to read his question, throw it out there. Obviously, we want Dr. Grampuchet to answer the question, and we'll have her do that next week. DJ, and we want to say that DJ writes to us from Unlocking the Key to Autism. And DJ says, my question is, in 2013, as part of the new diagnostic criteria for autism, they got rid of Asperger's syndrome in the DSM-5. But Dr. Doreen had said that if you were already formally diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, that you should be grandfathered in until you had to qualify for insurance funding again. But it was the first-time diagnosis that professionals that diagnose autism were supposed to follow for the new DSM-5. And I know that DJ is referring to a video that we did back in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, when we were waiting for the new diagnostic, the criteria had come out and it was about to be adopted. And so Dr. Grampuchet at that time was talking about what the expectations were. And at the time, it was, the expectation was, if you already had that Asperger's diagnosis, you'd be grandfathered in, but the first time that your insurance was asking for a reevaluation, then you would be evaluated under that new DSM-5, but new people would be diagnosed under the new DSM-5 from the beginning. Okay, so, but it was a first-time diagnosis that professionals that diagnose autism were supposed to follow the new DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for autism, which would mean that there would be no Asperger's syndrome, but an individual that I know, her brother, was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome in 2016 as an adult. And I told this individual that I did not think that his diagnosis was valid because of the new DSM-5 diagnostic criteria for autism taking out Asperger's. Now, I told her the one way that I thought it could be valid is if they diagnosed him with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and then listed Asperger's syndrome as an Asperger's type as part of a modifier or a specifier. That is the only way I told her that it could be listed, but that cannot be the actual diagnosis. So I would like some clarification from Dr. Grampuchet on the issue. And if possible, I would like this question answered on Wednesday, March 6th. I tried. I tried, DJ, I tried. I will say, I'm not the expert on this, but when you roll something out, I certainly saw that there were people who did not adopt the new diagnostic criteria as quickly as maybe they were supposed to. So if it was adopted in 2015, if there was somebody who was still saying Asperger's in 2016, that might be that they were just a little slow on the uptick. I don't know. And we'll have Dr. Grampuchet answer this. But I will say this, that a diagnosis is such a personal thing. And when people share a diagnosis with you, there are times when I will hear people say something, even on this trip that we were just on, whenever we would get into a Lyft car to go someplace and go from office to office, and we would say, here's the address of where we're going to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And then the Lyft driver would then start asking questions about autism or offer things that they had heard, right? And I don't know, maybe it's just me, DJ, but one of the things that I was taught was if somebody believes something, that, unless you're an absolute expert on it, you don't correct them. Do you know what I mean? So, and I know from the people that I have met, and my son being one of them, that their diagnosis and how they like to identify them is very personal and very unique. When people come now to the studio to do an interview, or if they're on Skype, one of the first things that I ask them is, how do you like to be identified? And would you please take on identifying yourself for yourself? Because I've just learned over time how personal it is. So imagine saying to somebody, I have a diagnosis of X, and having somebody else say, no, I don't think you do. I don't think it's valid. You could be right, but it would still hurt. So I just want you to be mindful of that it's something that people take really personally and that they identify with because it's a part of them. So anyway, Just my 2 cents on that, but we'll try to have Dr. Granpeesheh answer that question for you next week. We will try our level best, right? Want to say hi to Chris, who's written in. Chris, we love you. We think that you're amazing. So thanks for watching. Okay, we're going to take a short break, but we're going to come back, and if you guys have questions for me, now is the time to write them in. We have a couple of questions left from last week, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about our trip this last week, but I would be happier to answer any questions that you guys have, so stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about a allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap. You know,
But it's full of crap
cereal.
and it's hard to do. We don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not
Personality, we can't do anything about.
Yeah, can't do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're going to just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes. And the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go. Pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
It looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, you know, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out. Find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing. You might need to access new levels of service. But I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that, as they grow, do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better, and you're going to see amazing progress.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Glad to have you. We have a bunch of questions. Okay. For those of you who are joining us late, unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Graham-Pichet this morning, and I was on planes, so I didn't get that notice until really late. That was my bad. But so if you have questions that are of a nature that I can answer, I will tell you things that I can answer, but there are things that I cannot answer. But here is one that I can answer to some extent. Somebody wrote in our live feature and said, should my child diagnosed with ASD, and they put in parentheses that they're 3, I think so that means they're 3-year-old, be going to school or getting ABA in the home? And while every child is different and you want to make sure that you go to someone who can prescribe for your child what the best formula would be, I can tell you that the research is pretty clear and conclusive on this. That there are hundreds of studies that show that in the window from 3 to 5 years old that, and they compare, this is one of the great things about the research studies that are out there, they will compare a program, an ABA program to an autism program to a school program to doing nothing. And there are tons of studies about this that have said very clearly that the best, most effective thing for your child in that window of time that's 3 to 5 is for them to do an intensive one-on-one ABA program. That's what's been shown to be really effective. But notice that I said intensive. So the studies have shown that that intensive means 25 to 40 hours a week of intensive ABA that is one-on-one. And what we don't know from all those studies is that what was happening the rest of the time that those individuals weren't in therapy, because one of the things that I have seen anecdotally as I meet parents of kids who have done very well, it has been clear to me that the parents were people who learned what was happening in therapy, so that 25 hours or that 40 hours was being upheld in the household. And there are other studies that have shown that parent involvement is one of the most important determining factors on how well a child does in ABA. That there are a couple of different things that are indicative of the highest possible outcome. One of them is the sheer number of hours, which is that intensive thing that I was talking about, having really good oversight from a really good experienced ABA, a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, and having parent involvement. Those are the 3 things that across the board lead to better outcomes. So when I hear, and it's funny that I just came back from 2 days of being up north, and last month we had been in the Sacramento area, and I see that that is a pocket of the world where somebody in some school district started, I don't even know if it was a memo or something, but they've clearly trained their school staff to say to parents, well, the thing about ABA is that it's better to get quality ABA than, it's really about the quality, not the quantity. Now, here's my problem with that statement is that, yeah, I think it's absolutely better to get quality ABA, for sure. That is like a really important thing, not going to argue with that. But they're taking the argument and using it and saying, so only do like 15 hours of ABA and do the rest of the time at school, because that's what they're implying to parents is effective. I don't know that they come right out and say it, because that would be a bald-faced lie. But, what I was saying to parents is, please go back to them and say, where is the study that shows that? And I feel very comfortable about that, because there is no study that shows that. So I just want parents to know that if you're going to follow the science, and I think it's worthwhile to look at the science, because it's not like it's one study or it's my opinion. There are hundreds of studies that illustrate how effective ABA is. And then in all the studies where they compare a classroom and even an autism classroom, because I know schools go, well, that's not a regular classroom. We have an autism-specific classroom, right? And they've compared those programs and found that ABA is wildly more effective. So my question always to parents is, what's your goal? What are you wanting for your child? And it's so interesting to hear all the different responses that parents say because everybody is different, right? But some parents will say, well, I want my child to be able to go to, when it's time for kindergarten, I want them to be prepared and at level. So, you know, what's the most effective thing then for getting a child prepared for kindergarten? Well, the studies are clear about that. An intensive ABA program. An intensive, I'm talking 25 to 40 hours, right? And it's one-on-one, and that's very rare to find one-on-one ABA at school. You'll hear schools say all the time, you know, oh, we do an ABA-based program. And you say, okay, what's the ratio of teachers to students? Oh, it's 1 to 10. Well, how is that ABA? And they say, well, it's ABA-based. It's based on the principles of ABA. And I love that. I love that they're based on the principles of ABA. But for that age range, you know, when your kid is older, by the time your kid is 6, legally they have to go to school or they have to have a medical reason not to go to school. But in that window before that, it's been shown that it's much more effective to do that one-on-one. Okay. So ask your school if your school is saying, oh no, but it's about the quantity. It's about the quality of the ABA, not about the quantity. Well, I beg to differ. It's about both of them. And if you're only doing quality ABA for 10 hours a week, you're going to find in the studies that it says that that's the same as doing nothing. So please, I'm encouraging you to fact find for yourself, read the studies, and then I know from firsthand experience that taking time to make sure that your child has the skills to be successful at school is so very important. When we take a kiddo who doesn't have social skills, and a lot of times when I ask parents, what is it you want? They'll go, well, I want them to be socialized so that they're ready for this, that, and the other thing. So I don't want them to be doing one-on-one because they won't be socialized. Well, that's a narrow view of what one-on-one is, and now especially because, and you asked, is it better to be doing ABA in the home? And I would say to you, it's better to be doing ABA in the center. We know that that's 80 to 85% faster because there's a social component to it. I just came back from visiting all of these offices, and oh my goodness, how much fun in the middle of the day. It's like having a house full of kids, and there are different rooms, and kids have different things going on. And in this corner, there was a Monopoly game going on where we were learning about winning and losing and being a good loser and not rubbing it in somebody's face, right? With a couple of kids over here, and then over there, they're learning colors. And, you know, all of these things going on all over the center. It was so much fun. I saw at least 2 kids who, when parents came together and they're like, oh, I have to leave, they were having a ball and they were learning. So be aware of the fact that there is a social component when you are in the center, but there are also moments where things that are difficult, concepts that are difficult, are taught one-on-one without a whole lot of commotion. My son had the benefit of a one-on-one intensive program, 40 hours a week when he was 3, but we had it in the home because there wasn't a center. And school told me I was making a big mistake, that he needed to go to school. They even filed due process against us. I'm not kidding. People always say, no, I think you mean that the other way around. No, I don't. They filed due process against us because they really did not think what we were doing was right. But in that first year, what happened was that my son made so much progress that previously the school evaluated him and offered him the moderate to severe program, the most restrictive environment, right? And after 1 year of that ABA intensive, 40 hours, one-on-one, they offered him full inclusion, and he was ready for full inclusion. He was ready to be with other kids because in the year before, he would have gone and during recess, he would have played with the car and been like this with the car and laying down with the car and never have talked to a friend, never have made a friend, never have understood what it was to have a friend. A year of ABA, and he was walking up to other kids and saying, do you want to play with me? In preschool, they were telling us during the holidays that it was super fun because they had these chains of plastic. They were like little plastic rings, but with a hole cut out in them so you could string them together, right? To make almost like a paper chain, but they were plastic and they were all different colors. And my son called over one of the other little boys and said, hey, Jaden, do you want to do this with me? And they were stringing the thing together, and there was a little playhouse in the preschool. And my son said, let's pretend that these are like holiday lights, and let's string them all over the house. And they got the whole class involved in it, and which was very creative and imaginative. And he pulled other people in to play and directed an activity because he was ready, because they'd gotten him ready in that year. Whereas if we had just kept throwing him in and been like, well, we hope that someday he sits up and looks and plays and does whatever, I don't know what would have happened, but I don't want to know, right? So I'm encouraging you, look at the studies, but I think what you're going to find is the best place for your child is to be getting one-on-one ABA, get in that window of 25 to 40 hours. Now, if you want to do preschool on top of that, great. But the problem becomes that preschool it's at this time. It's from 8 to 11, or it's 8 to noon, or it's whatever the time is, and this is when we do preschool, right? And it's not going to be flexible. So you're going to be like, well, that's not flexible, so I'm going to put it there, and I'll just tell the ABA people we can fill in whatever hours. And it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't, because the ABA people are mostly available during the same times as the daycare, right? So I'm going to tell you to prioritize and get your ABA first. And if you have time afterwards for something else, absolutely do other things. Absolutely. But get the ABA in first. That's what's essential. You'll never be sorry. Not ever. And I know, because we went through that, and boy, am I glad that we did that intensive program. Okay, we have a bunch more questions. Grandmom has written in and said that her grandson is nonverbal, has a talker device, and that they're trying to teach him to communicate by using the device. He's 10 in the 5th grade at a public school. Okay, but you're in a place, I'm just going to say, because I don't want to mention names, but you're in a place in Massachusetts where you're not far from a card office. And I'll tell you something, you can teach someone how to use a device to talk with you. But every time you sit down to teach somebody that's in your family something, it's not like it's a fresh moment, right? They have a relationship with you. You bring baggage to the relationship. And it's not all bad baggage, right? But it might be that, well, Grandma snuggles me, right? And what I get from, Grandma's my snuggler, and I want to snuggle up to her. So when you're trying to teach him, look, when you want snuggles, you have to ask for it on the iPad. He comes over and sneaks a snuggle, and you go, well, it's my baby, I'm gonna snuggle him, right? But that's not the best teaching moment. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not the best teaching moment. And sometimes it's easier to have strangers teach something than it is to have you bring your baggage and teach something. It's just the way. It's humbling. I hated it. I'm gonna be honest here. I hated it that therapists were better teachers for my son than I was. Oh my goodness. I'm a teacher. And every niece and nephew and friends' kids loved me, and I couldn't teach my own kid. Are you kidding me? But you got to put your personal feelings about things aside and say what would be best for the kiddo. So you're not far from offices that are card offices in Massachusetts, and I would encourage you to get some ABA. And at 10, you're not going to do probably 40 hours unless during the summer. You could do 40 hours during the summer, but he's going to go to school during the day. But you're going to need some help to really get him proficient on using the device. But here's what your piece is in it. A lot of times when a kiddo is being taught a device, how to communicate with a device, it's really hard for the family to become really solidly supportive of it, because you're used to a million other things. And you're still hopeful that you're going to get speech. And you should be, right? More and more kids make the transition from using an assistive technology device to speech than ever. But it's important to recognize that they don't make the transition from just working years on years and suddenly get speech. They get it on the device first and then speaks. Now, if you've got a little kid who doesn't speak and you start therapy, they're going to start trying to get them to speak. But if even 6 weeks goes by and they don't get any kind of vocal sound, they will very quickly say, this is frustrating. This is very frustrating. Let's move to the device and then we'll come back for the sound. And they'll always pair the sound so that they're getting it over and over. And that is what works. But for a 10-year-old, it's, if you just imagine for a moment, and if you really want to be brave, try to just take a pad and communicate your needs through a pad, like a pad of paper, and write down what you want to say and the time that it takes. It's frustrating, right? And the device will be faster than that, but it's going to take time and it's going to be frustrating in the beginning. So I recommend that you get somebody to help you to do that. And that's a relatively, you should have insurance that would cover that, especially in the state of Massachusetts. That's what I would do, but you're going to have to follow through on it. And it's going to be painful because there are going to be times when he's going to want something and there's a way that he's asked for it before in the past that didn't involve the device. And now, you know, he's going to ask for it in that way. He's going to point or whatever. And you're going to have to play stupid and be like, oh, I don't know. Maybe you should pick up your pad and tell me what it is, right? And wait for him to do that. But that will be the keys to his kingdom. And when he can communicate his needs to you, his life is going to get so much better, and your life will get so much better, and your relationship will get so much better. But it's going to have to be across the board. But I would recommend that you get some help and support for that. One more question, and then we're going to take a break. We have another question. Is there a center in Pennsylvania's near future? Currently, we're an hour and a half away from the New Jersey office, and I don't know how state insurance will work over there. Not to mention the daily commute is murder, and thanks, from a Philly suburb mom. So I am sure that at some point, CARD will end up in Philadelphia, but I don't know that it's going to be anytime soon. But here is what determines that. And this has been across the board in the history of CARD. When things spring up and happen in places, and we were just talking with families about this over the last 2 days, that, you know, CARD just opened a teen and adult center in Duarte, and they're getting ready to open 3 more of them in different places. And parents were saying, well, what decides where CARD puts things? And I said, oh, you know, across the board, CARD has always been this way. It's parent-driven. So when CARD first opened an office in, well, I mean, you know, there was an office in Woodland Hills, right? But then they decided to open one in Thousand Oaks just down the street. Why? Because there were 2 families who were saying, the commute is murder. There's got to be other families over here. We'd really like it if you have an office in Thousand Oaks, and we'll help spread the word. How many kids would it take for us to be able to start a center? And usually it's 10. But, you know, it's happened for less. So writing in things like that, and I will make sure that Dr. Grampy-Shea sees that, but also banding together with other parents. And a lot of times what happens is that families will start by having a therapist just come to the area. They arrange to have a therapist come to visit and train staff. And then, you know, then more families come in and the therapist comes back, usually a BCBA, comes back more often. And then it just becomes easier to open an office. So keep on plugging, because you are what determines where an office will be. And if you want one to open in Philadelphia, then find yourself at least one more parent, and let's start working on that. That's the way that works. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with a bunch more questions that you guys have written in, and there's still time. You can write in on our live feature, or you can write in on Facebook or YouTube, whatever flips your switch, so to speak. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism. Welcome back. I'm just checking on Facebook. But we had a question that came in the live feature. It says, good morning. My 8.5-year-old son with autism is very bright, is considered high functioning. He still has behaviors and tantrums, is fully potty trained and can ask for all he needs, can ask questions like who, why, where, can have short conversations about the things he likes, speakers, movies, credits, hip-hop music. My question is, can my son still have the chance to recover with intensive ABA? I contacted CARD in Edison, New Jersey, and I'm waiting on a response to hopefully start services soon. He's a very smart boy, but like I said earlier, sometimes has tantrums and injurious behavior when frustrated or mad. He'll be 9 in June, and I get sad thinking even though he's got so much potential and skills that he would not be able to recover. Also, he's hyper and attention can be a problem. Please let me know your opinion and thanks in advance. I would be so lost without this show. I'm just sending you a hug. And I'm going to say to you, you know, I wish Dr. Grampy were here to answer this. And I can't answer this from an expert point of view. I can only answer this from a point of view who somebody has journalistically been covering autism for more than a decade. And that is that it sounds like your son has a whole bunch of skills in, like, if we were to put, you know, in the plus column, here are all the things that he can do. And he's clearly able to learn and has learned things and is potty trained and is all these things and can have short conversation, right? But there are still a list over here of things that you want him to be able to do, right? And we call those things that you want him to be able to do skills. And it can be self-management, emotional self-regulation, being able to calm himself down when something is happening that is not what he wants. That's a skill. That's a skill. And it's something that can be taught, right? On the other list of things that you have, that sometimes the tantrums can get to the point of being injurious when frustrated or mad. It sounds like that there are other things that he's still, like being able to have an in-depth, long conversation. Skill. And he's already got the base skills of these things, and we just want to blow those skills up. So I want to say to you that no one can tell anyone definitively, oh, this child will recover on this day. Because there's so much work between here and there, and it's a question of, is he willing to do it? Are you willing to do it and follow through on it? And how intensively are you willing to do it? But I'm here to tell you, don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anybody tell you no. Because between here and there, which is whatever stretch of time you want it to be, it can be from, you know, he's about to be 9, it could be from here to 13, or it could be from here to 18, or from here to 32, or here to 132, right? He is going to continue to grow. It's just a matter of how fast will he continue to grow. And part of that, at a certain point, at 10, you still have a lot of control over that at 10. But when he gets into the teenage years, he's going to be letting you know, I don't want to do this, and I want to do that, right? They get much more driven into the things that they want to do. But I'm telling you, put in the time and give him the opportunity to learn those skills. Give him intensive ABA, as intensive as you can give to a 10-year-old, because you do have to go to school, and let him grow and see where he will get. It's that thing of shoot for the stars, and no matter where you get, you'll have gone somewhere. He will make progress. Can I guarantee you recovery? No, because no one can. But one of the things that I've learned along the way, I started out and, you know, recovery was my whole, that's what we want. We got to have recovery. There's anything short of that, we got to have recovery. That was the thing. But as our kids grow older, I feel that shifts for most people. And somebody was asking me the other day, what is your thought on that now? And I said, my thought on that now is that I want my son to be happy and to have as few hurdles in his way as possible so that he can go and do the thing that he wants to do and not in any way be held back. And if you put that criteria on your son and say, okay, I just want him to be able to do all the things that he wants to be able to do and never feel like something is in his way. And that's what we want to put time and energy into, then I think you would do ABA intensively, right? You end up in the same place. And if you get to the point where he never needs support and he doesn't need any services, then you go, woohoo, we did it. We did it. But the truth of the matter is if you don't get to that point, but he gets to the point where he's having an in-depth conversation with you about things that matter to him, and he's at the point where when he gets frustrated, he can say, you know what, I'm frustrated, I need a minute to process this. I'm going to step into the other room for a second. You will be so proud of him, right? And even if he gets to the point where occasionally, like once a year, he has a tantrum, I got to be honest, I have a tantrum once a year, right? I mean, I'm not perfect at self-regulation, and my son reminds me of this all the time. So, make sure that you're shooting for something that's realistic to start with, right? Because I think I've seen a lot of people have tantrums. And I shouldn't joke about that because none of us should be. We should all acquire the skill of self-regulation, but I'm just saying realistically, not everybody does. So I would be working on those skills. I would do ABA intensively because why not? Especially if you can get insurance to pay for it. And if you get good quality ABA, your son will be having fun while he's doing it. He'll be making friends while he's doing it. And it will help him with pretty much every skill he needs to have moving forward in his life. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that it answers the spirit of what you're asking about. Should you continue? Should you be shooting for things? Because we always should. There was a certain point when we accomplished so much, and my son could talk, and we didn't have tantrums very often. Maybe once in a while he'd get fatutzed with me, but I got kind of comfortable. I have to be honest. I was like, well, we've come a long way. He's tired. I'm tired. Let's just deal with school. Homework is enough. I think, and he had already completed his ABA program, and CARD said that they felt that he would be better served by going out into the public and gaining the skills that he needed in the public. But, I really wasn't pushing the agenda very much because I was tired. I wanted to be done. But the truth is with parenting, you're never done. That your kids are always growing, and as human beings, we're always growing. And our autism whisperer, his grades started to slip at school, and I was like, oh, what now, And so I had our autism whisperer come and observe in school and just take a look at what's happening. And he said to me, in a very loving way, he said, hey, have you given up? And I was like, what? He's like, there's still work to be done here. And it's like not that intensive, but there's work that needs to be done. And he's bored and he's getting away with murder. And you need to push him and get him excited about things and give him things that are hard. School is not hard, and that's why his grades are slipping. And I'll tell you what, we followed that advice, and oh my gosh, we got so much more. And I'm so glad that we did. But, forgive yourself if you, have had a moment where you're like, oh, I'm tired. I don't know if I have it in me. But then you got to push through and do everything you can. Give them every single possibility because they're worth it and your life is worth it, right? Okay, do we have time for a quick break before Let's Talk Autism? Mr. Traven? Not really? Okay, we're going to do a quick break, and we might be back with more questions before Let's Talk Autism. Stick with us. Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, why does my child stim? Well, first of all, let's talk about what stimming is. Stimming is a slang term for self-stimulatory behavior, which is kind of a misnomer anyway, because a lot of the times when our children engage in these kinds of behaviors, they're not to stimulate themselves. Sometimes they're to soothe themselves. So first of all, we want to get rid of the notion that it's to stimulate themselves. But they do these behaviors because there's something about it that feels good. And that's the main thing that we need to know as parents. It's not some random behavior. There's something about it that's giving the child a paycheck. And once we get an idea of what that might be, we need to find a behavior that can take that behavior's place and start to reinforce that. We want to pick something that's more socially acceptable. So if, for instance, the child is doing a lot of hand flapping because they like seeing their blurred fingers, then we can find something else for them to focus on, maybe a toy that does blurred colors. So for a period of time, they'll focus on that. The main thing to remember, though, is that there is a reason for these behaviors. There's something about it that feels good to the child. And once we know that, we can begin to change it. There's a phrase that's being used in the autism community called stimming. Welcome back. So we had a couple of more questions here that I wanted to try to get to. First one that just came in a couple of minutes ago. Hi, just wanted to check, is there a trial period when you first start using Skills Living? Thanks. I believe that there is a 14-day trial. You can call that, if you go to skillsliving.com, or you can go to skillsforautism.com, which is the umbrella of all of Skills. Call the 800 number that's there and tell them that I sent you and say, I'd like a 14-day free trial, and ask them to give you a walkthrough of it to show you how to use it, because Skills Living is amazing. Really great. So, and then another question that came in. Hello, Mrs. Shannon. This is from India. I religiously watch Autism Live ever since my daughter was diagnosed 6 years back. I've also asked questions for which I've gotten great advice, and I have accessed Skills online too, which is absolutely amazing. And I'm sending you a hug. My question today is, what are other therapies apart from ABA did your son have? OT, speech, sensory integration, etc., and how long does he still go for OT? And so that's a great question. And so we did a lot of things in conjunction with our ABA. And one of the reasons why I loved being at CARD when we came to CARD was that other ABA providers wouldn't allow you to do anything else. And CARD was like, no, let's do as many things as possible. So we did a little bit of biomedical. Now, the diet is considered biomedical, in which case, if you consider that biomedical, we did a lot of biomedical, because we did a lot of diet things. He was on the gluten-free, casein-free diet, and then for a very short period of time, like 21 days, we put him on the specific carbohydrate diet. We've dabbled in a couple of other diets. We also were doing a modified Feingold diet that we took out all artificial colors and flavors, and for over a year, we took out the high salicylate things like tomatoes, and I'm trying to think all the different things that we took out. There were no apples in his diet for a year, just to see what that would do. We found that the artificial colors were causing issues, but we were able to put things like tomatoes and apples and such like that back in later on. Raisins, he wasn't having anything like that for a long time. But we did, through school, we had speech and OT, and we did do those things. We prioritized the ABA over them. So we would fill our ABA program until we would get to 40 hours. And then if we had time left over, and if it did match up with the school, we would do OT and we would do speech. And I don't mean that to make it sound like those things aren't important and that they weren't helpful. They were. It's just if you have the priority. And for me, I wanted everything to be clear because I hate making decisions. So we made our manifesto and said, here's what's most important, here's what's next. So then we just followed it. You know what I'm saying? So that we could be driven by the things that we said that we wanted to be driven by. So he did do speech, he did do OT. I found that the speech and the OT helped, but it really was if the person who was doing it was great. Like, we had one speech teacher who was amazing. I've tried to get her to come on the show, and she's retired now, and I want her to come on the show because she had this whole system of articulation that she had developed that was amazing. Still want to get her on the show. We have had OTs, some that were better than others. I was just talking about this the other day, that for a while we had an OT that was doing something called the astronaut training program with my son. And I know it sounds like, woohoo, what's that? But it's basically having a table. And for some kids, they don't get enough. It's sort of funny that my inner ear is so sensitive. Like, I am car sick all the time. Just sitting here, I'm car sick, right? Like, you can't even put me on the tram at Disneyland. I need a Dramamine because I'm so car sick. So I have a hypersensitive inner ear, whereas for some of our kids on the spectrum, like my son, they have a very not sensitive. Like, it takes a lot of stimulation for their inner ear to be activated. And so when you spin them, it activates that, and we found, and they find this with a lot of kids, that the astronaut program would temporarily give them a burst of language. So it was this thing, and there's a very specific protocol, but you put them on the turntable, and you sit them down on the turntable, and you turn them 10 turns to the right and 10 turns to the left. Then you have them lay down on their right side, 10 turns to the right, 10 to the left, and you have to look it up because I'm paraphrasing what the thing was, but it was like 6 different positions, and you would do 10 to the right and 10 to the left, and then the kids sit up and you see what you have. And we, my son would be like, boom, there after being spun. So we used to take him to Disneyland all the time and put him on the teacups, and it helped him. It helped him. And we had a turntable. It was just very easy, 2 pieces of wood with like a Lazy Susan thing you get at Home Depot, and we would turn him on them. And then sometimes when I didn't have anything else to do, I just put him in an office chair and turn him. And he loved it, and it helped him not only with speech, but with regulation, and he never got dizzy. If you had done that to me, I would have all over you, right? So be careful if you're going to do something like this. Look it up, talk to an OT about it. But I do remember the OT who said to me, she was like, wow, your son, if you spin him and if you turn him upside down, he, it really activates that part in his brain. If you could get one of those things where he can hang upside down and spin in your house. And I said, are you telling me that my child is a bat? But it helped him. We did a little bit of equine therapy. We did a bunch of things. He surfed with Surfers Healing. We did as many things as we could think of and took our program out into the community all the time. So I'm a big fan of, what do you think your child would be interested in, and take them to do those things. And then, if that doesn't happen, take them to do other things. But be a part of your culture, be a part of what's ever happening. We took him to every event that happened in our community, every single one. Because I wanted him to get used to being out in the world, and I wanted our community to get used to being around him. So, yeah, and all of it was helpful, but it was all centered around our ABA program. And whatever we were working on in the ABA program is what we would take to whatever the other thing was. So that was how we did it. In any case, now we're out of time. Look at that, how that hour went by so fast. So we're going to take a break, and then it's going to be time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And we've got some amazing guests for you today. I'm really excited about this. So we've got the news that's coming up, plus we've got guest Dan Mcmanmon. The name has got a lot of M's in it, we'll see. And then we have Dana Meller, who's going to be with us, and I'm really excited. She's joining us from I'm going to mess up the name of the company, but it's Past the Big BCBA exam. And she helps get people ready to be able to take that test. But wait till you hear her story, because she's got an amazing story. We have a Broadway star on the show today, you guys. So I'm just going to tease that. All right, we're going to take a break, get Nancy in here, and get this show off and running. So stick with us. Talk to us a little bit about what your degree is in.
City planning or urban planning.
I got it from Cal State Northridge with a degree in cinema and television arts, with an emphasis in screenwriting.
And what are you interested in, Eli?
A video game internship.
Computer programming.
I'm hoping to combine entertainment or travel, my 2 passions.
Ooh, what kind of jobs have you worked?
Bakery inventory.
Okay, inventory.
Talk about your volunteer job.
Opportunity to help the soldiers.
You volunteered to help the soldiers?
Yes. I interned in the national parks in the Santa Monica Mountains, which is very urban area. So I worked with the problems of how it's impacting the surrounding community, like the flow of traffic and the flow of people and what they could do to plan in the parking.
I've been to China. I've been all around Europe. I've been to Thailand, Japan, Australia.
You can create an app? That's impressive. Really cool thing. Can you teach other people how to make an app? If you have a choice between working or not working.
Working.
You like working?
Yes.
Why? What do you like about working?
It is fun.
I would work.
Yeah? You would choose work? Why?
Cause I want to get paid and enjoy it, and want to make sure I have enough money so I can save it.
Why do you need to have a full-time job? I mean, it's kind of like a duh thing, right?
No, obviously, so I can support myself
Right.
and hopefully a family down the line, but at least at first, myself.
I'm very dependable and always reliable and get to my job on time.
What excites you about working a job or being an intern?
Learning new skills.
Yeah. What has it meant to you having this job and having the stability of a job that you've had for multiple years?
It's meant the world because I'm able to do everything, but almost everything I wanted to do because of that job.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman, Executive Director of TACA. We're gonna bake again.
All right.
It's my lovely assistant.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lucero.
We've heard so many people go, I want a decent chocolate chip cookie for my kid to eat. We've got all our dry ingredients. So I've got the flour, I've got the flaxseed meal, baking soda, baking powder, our gum, or xanthan gum.
Great.
So we're gonna get started in the mixer here. So there's our dry ingredients. I did have brown sugar. We did cut this down. And the one way to do that is my favorite, and that's maple syrup. I'm using egg for this recipe, but we could use more arrowroot and also the flaxseed meal. So I'll go ahead and throw my eggs in here, which I love doing. So, and then the last thing is a shortening and gluten-free casein-free butter replacement. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in. I've let it sit out for a while so it's nice and soft. So let's go ahead and mix this thing well. These are dairy-free, soy-free, and I really like them. Again, Enjoy Life is a great product. It's also net-free. And chocolate chips are a personal thing. I won't judge you if you use the whole bag.
I would.
I know, right? So here we go. Great recipe. It's the nice consistency. Everything's ready to go so we can enjoy our cookies here in just about 10 minutes. We want to give it a kind of like a couple inches between each cookie. Now, a lot of people are really concerned about aluminum, so what I've done is I laid down my natural brown parchment paper, and Jen's helping out putting the cookies down. So we're separating the nice baked good that's all organic from the aluminum cookie sheets. So let's go put these in. So magic oven allows me to pull the last ones out. And voila.
Yum, that's good.
Really great cookies. I'll let you have a bite so you can do my Vanna White there too.
Mm.
Yeah, these taste pretty
Good,
good.
really good.
Mm. We're going to come back later after I gain 5 pounds and eat this entire tray.
For sure.
You know, more feedback is good. So if there's something you want us to convert, like another recipe or maybe a relative made, just let us know, autismlive@gmail.com. You can go to Facebook, or there's thousands of recipes on the TACA website just waiting for you to explore. You can go to TACANOW, TACANOW.org, and we'll see you next time at Autism Live.
Bye.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism. I'm Nancy Allspaw Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Good to see you, friend.
It's fabulous to be here with you. I'm running on fumes, so I'm so glad you're here.
You've been burning the candle at both
hither
ends.
and yon, as my grandmother used to say. Hither and yon. But Nancy, it was so much fun. We met all like the most precious kids, the most wonderful parents.
Oh, good.
And the most wonderful young people who are working with kids. It just really lifted me up to see all these people doing all this good.
That's
it was just
wonderful.
a really fabulous thing. And to get spend some real time in a center and get to know the kids that are there. And just some of these kids are absolutely, there was a kid yesterday who is hilarious. He's like a little stand-up comedian, and he would come by and he would talk to us and he would say something, and then so he'd deliver some sort of punchline, and then he'd go wah wah. He would take off running, and we were just enthralled with him. We were just like, okay, that kid needs to be on TV. But just wah wah, and then he would go off. So our kids are amazing.
I know they are.
So fun to be around them, and I wish I had more time to be around. I met some amazing parents.
I bet you did.
Some inspirational parents. Do you know who we got to see, though, that I was so excited that they came? Swathi, who's Siri's mom.
Yeah, Siri's mom.
And so
who does the blue bracelets for us.
Yes. She makes the most wonderful jewelry, and she's been on the show before. But we had never met Siri before because Mom, who's Swathi, who's so inspirational, she's been on the show, and she's going to come back on the show because they're working on something that I want her to unveil. But so she came and brought Siri, so I got to meet Siri for the first time, and that just warmed my heart. And I got to meet her amazing husband too, because it's a village.
It is,
right?
and they've done so many great things with Siri.
Oh yeah. Now, and you guys, if you follow Swathi and Siri and the things, she's now making paper beads.
Oh wow!
Which is
paper beads.
Paper beads. Have you ever seen this?
No, I've never seen them.
Long strips of any kind of paper, and paper can be so beautiful.
Right.
And then you roll it around a pin, and it's a little exacting. Like you have to have a feel for it, and she does. First time out the gate, and so you have to roll them, and you have to use just like the right amount of glue, not too much glue, and then it's kind of like it's something akin to when old men used to sit and roll cigarettes from scratch, but it's a very specific and beautiful paper beads.
I can't wait to see those.
And then they get dipped in an acrylic so that they're
I see, to harden them.
Oh my gosh, they're beautiful. So I can't wait to see the jewelry she's going to make with her paper beads.
That'll be exciting.
So yes, we'll be having them on the show.
Well, I'm
again
glad you had a
soon.
good time on your travels.
Yes, there was no rest.
Yeah.
No rest for the weary, you know how they say. Anyway.
Well, we have some stories in the news here.
Yes, let's say though too that we're having two amazing guests today. Dan Mcmanmon is going to be with us up first. He is the president of CIP, and so we're excited to talk with him about that. And then we have having Dana Meller, who's going to be with us from, I always get the name of it wrong, but Pass the Big ABA Exam. And so we know that it takes a board-certified behavior analyst to really help our kids and design their program, and that's a really hard thing to become. You have to put in a whole bunch of hours, a whole bunch of schooling, and then you got to pass this. The reason why it's called a board-certified is because you had to pass an exam by the board, and they certify you. So it's not an easy thing to do, and we've seen a lot of people get really tense about it, but this is a service that helps prepare them for the test.
It's sort of like preparing for your law boards.
Yeah, to take what is that when they call it passing the bar?
Passing the bar, yeah.
Yeah,
people that help you prepare for that.
Exactly. And so, and Dana's going to be with us, but Dana just happens to be a former Broadway star.
Oh.
And, and not just any show I'm telling tales on her. She's going to be like, what? Don't give away all my secrets. But, she was just in a little show called Les Mis on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. Hardship, right? So it will be thrilling. I'm telling you, stay with us, but at sometime later date, go Google her and see her sing because, oh my goodness, she is amazing.
Interesting background for what she's doing now. Yeah.
Right. And we know her husband because her husband performed on the telethon that we did with Corey Feldman.
With Corey Feldman, who wants to do a telethon again, by the way. So,
okay, well, That's good to know.
Yeah.
But her husband performed, Mark Miller, and was wonderful on the telethon. And so that's, there are all these threads and ties of how we know them. But anyway, so she will be on the show, and that will be very exciting.
Okay.
But let's do in the news.
In the news, the risk and severity of autism decreases for high-risk siblings of children with autism if mom takes prenatal vitamins during the first month of pregnancy.
Yeah,
This is a big finding.
This is a study that's coming out of UC Davis. And, we're always looking for ways that we can ensure that our kids are the healthiest that they can be, and that starts in pregnancy. And this is a pretty big finding. And this just came out. It was just released last Wednesday. It's from the Mind Institute at UC Davis. And it's the first time that research has shown that families with high risk for autism and successive children can benefit from the prenatal vitamins.
Right.
So
even if you're thinking about getting pregnant, they're saying you should start taking these vitamins.
Absolutely. Now, we'll say that with this has come a huge backlash from the autism community saying, please make sure that people understand that if you find yourself getting at all like run down or feeling significantly worse after you start taking vitamins, it may be that you are positive for the MTHFR.
Oh, really?
And the folic acid in the prenatal vitamins for someone who takes is positive for MTHFR actually will do more harm than good.
Oh.
So you need to be a little aware and a little cautious. Prenatal vitamins are a really good thing, but if you are positive for MTHFR, you should not be taking folic acid. You should be taking folinic acid.
And how does one find out if they're positive for the MTHFR?
Well, you can ask for a blood test.
Right.
It's pretty routine now. Like I was able to go to my doctor and my cardiologist and say, will you do a blood test for the MTHFR? And because he was a cardiologist, and there are good things to know about your heart if you're MTHFR positive, he was like, sure, I can order that test. That's not a problem. If you don't have a cardiologist and you're a young person and healthy, you might have a little bit more difficulty talking your doctor into it. But if you eat breakfast cereal and find that you're sick afterwards, because that comes with a whole bunch of iron and folic acid in it, that would be an indication. If you're somebody who's been feeling run down and kind of feel like you have flu symptoms a lot, you might want to up your game and say, I really want to get tested for this. Don't not take prenatal vitamins because we know that there are a whole bunch of things that can happen if you don't have the right, you need to have one, folic acid or folinic acid, or you can have a child with spina bifida. So, don't go, oh, I'm too afraid and take nothing. But I'm suggesting that if you take a prenatal vitamin and don't feel well, then switch over to the folinic acid, which isn't going to harm you.
Right. Well, that's
either way.
So out of Mind Institute at UC Davis.
Yes. Okay. And then we have I thought this was a really fun thing that I wanted to share, that Freddie Highmore, who plays the lead character on The Good Doctor, they've been picked up for season 3, which is a really wonderful thing. And he gets an opportunity to do a fair amount of interviews.
Yes, he does.
And I just really want to commend him for the way he has carried himself, because he's pretty famous now for playing a character on the autism spectrum. And he clearly, from all the people that we know that have been on the show and been a part of the show or that we've interviewed from the show, he's a young man who's done his research.
Yes.
And he's very kind and caring and compassionate. So recently in an interview that he did, somebody asked him a question. It was an interview with Peter Travers for a segment, Popcorn with Peter Travers. And a question was asked about something having to do with feelings. So Travers said, and you have to feel it. You have to feel the emotion, and yet you're playing somebody who can't express that emotion. And Highmore took a pause, and he said, I realize that you didn't quite say this, but I want to address a myth that's out there. And so what he said, not in any way suggesting this, but I think one of the misconceptions, that you were in any way suggesting this, but I think that one of the misconceptions sometimes about people who have autism is that they somehow are devoid of emotion or emotionless, or that because they can't always express their emotions, that there's nothing going on inside. And of course, that's not true.
Right.
And I just thought, what an amazing service he just did the autism community by taking a pause and saying, hey, I know you didn't say this.
You didn't mean it exactly this way.
You know, and you're not going there, but since you brought it up, here's this myth that isn't true.
And it is a myth, and this article goes on to say that autistic people feel emotion deeply. Emotional empathy exists by the bucketful. Cognitive empathy, knowing what to do when you're feeling or knowing how to respond to the feeling of others, that's another story entirely.
Right. And, you know, sometimes people on the autism spectrum have such a high amount of feeling of empathy when other people are upset that it can trigger them into a meltdown, or it can cause them to retreat into themselves. And so we on the neurotypical side sometimes misinterpret those things. So it's very important. We were in an Uber the other day, and I was telling them earlier that people would say, where are you going? We would say to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and then they would say something like, I have a nephew, or you know, whatever, or I know somebody who's on the spectrum, whatever, or they would ask a question, right? And one of, you know, it's just hard sometimes, but one of the Uber drivers said, yeah, now somebody was telling me that autism is the same as megalomania. And we were like, no, no, that's not what that is. And he said, well, maybe it's that they're the same as narcissists, which is a word that's being thrown around a lot right now from certain things happening in the world. And we were like, no, it's not that either, you know, and trying to then backtrack and educate this man who was like, oh yeah, I heard it was the same. No, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And thanks to Freddie Highmore, that word got out to some extent. And of course, the newswires have picked it up too, to say,
which is great.
He said this.
So he's a great advocate for our kids.
And I love him for that.
I know, he's fantastic.
Thank you, Freddie.
All right, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to be back with our first guest.
Yes, Dan Mcmanmon.
Mcmanmon, CIP president.
Yes, stick with us.
Love is a battlefield. Autism and PTSD for parents. It's a thing. I'm here to tell you it's survivable. What you need to do is remember, this is not for the faint of heart. There's actually a study that was done on mothers of children with autism, and it said, oh, this is very similar to PTSD among soldiers. And we're like, we needed a study for that. We already knew this. However, you got to remember that stress is very important, not only because it's just stress that we're all dealing with, part of the modern day life. It can have serious effects. Not only does it affect your child, your spouse, other members of your family, it also affects your health. The stress is linked to immune system conditions, which can be creating conditions like risk for cancer, heart attack, stroke, anxiety, social isolation, which also depresses your immune system further, and even, girls, listen to this, hair loss. How do we handle this kind of chronic battlefield condition? Well, we have to do what generals do. We get the troops together, we demand support, we push for what we need. So when you go into your meeting with the schools, be sure and you have people with you, because it can be very difficult if you don't have someone with you to help you. Get letters from the doctors, get your evaluations, do what you need to do to get what you can for your child, because that ends up making your stress less. Over the years, as you deal with this kind of stress, remember, it can be your friend because it can tell you things need to change. It can also be your enemy because it can create a lot of bad conditions. The moral of the story is, don't be too strong for too long.
inclusion is everything. Feeling like we have a place where we belong, and when I say we, I'm first and foremost a mother of a child on the spectrum and not, and gym owner and now founder of carrying this to families who need it as well.
My son is extremely hyperactive. Getting him to calm down is a very difficult task. So the idea of Rock the Spectrum Gym, where he could just go and run and play and do all these fun things without any kind of worries and just go, go, go and bring down that energy, it helps us so much at home. You know, in the home or at school, it's not acceptable, but this is the one place it is acceptable for the child to kind of be themselves and get it all out there and just really just be themselves.
It's an amazing place where my son could go and be himself. You get to meet other parents who are in the same journey as you are.
I think the most popular aspect of it is how they include all children of all types, not just only learning disabled, lower functioning, moderate functioning, high functioning, and non-disabled.
People there are so friendly. Everybody's like family. They always greet you with a smile. There's not one negative thing I could say about any of the employees. They're all absolutely amazing. So I think every parent should walk in through those doors and see what an amazing gym it is.
Now a diagnosis being 1 out of 6 kids are in some way or form affected with sensory processing disorder or autism. That's why We Rock Now is on the rise. People want to be a part of it. People know that they have a community there. They know that they can learn more information about things that they don't know themselves or that they can share, build friendships, and basically get what you get in an OT facility, but it's not $150 an hour. It's $12.
And we're back with Let's Talk Autism, and now we're joined via Skype by Dan Mcmanmon. And Dan is going to talk to us today about CIP. He's president of CIP. Dan, first of all, what does CIP stand for?
Sure, stands for the College Internship Program.
Wonderful.
Okay, great.
We're so happy to have you here today.
Can you provide an overview of what your program does and what type of students you serve?
Sure, yeah. So CIP is a transition program for youth 18 to 26 years old. It's a residential program, so it's a supported apartment living type setup where students come from all over and they typically stay for a year to 2 or 3 years time frame. And what we do is we provide comprehensive services under one roof: social skills, academics, employment focused areas, health and wellness, some CBT therapy, all in one place in our physical centers. I'm actually here in Long Beach, California, so you'll see some sessions and students floating around behind me. But we're supporting students primarily in independent living setting, in college academics, and in their employment pursuits through internships, volunteering, community service, things like that.
Wonderful. So how did this all get started? When was it founded and by whom?
So my father actually founded CIP 35 years ago. This year is our 35th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And he's a psychologist by trade. He, started running a group home in Las Vegas, of all places, and moved to Massachusetts, where we had started in 1984. So what's kind of interesting about his story is, over about 15-year span, he saw a bigger need and had built this really great program and slowly sort of brought new locations to more places. So we're located in Massachusetts, Melbourne, Florida, near Orlando, then Bloomington, Indiana, and Berkeley and Long Beach, California. So we serve about 160 students nationally. We've about 135 staff members, and we're primarily working with youth on the autism spectrum and with learning differences who are motivated and want to work on that next level from adolescence to adulthood.
Okay. What does CIP do to support and help students become more independent?
Sure. So I think when the student first comes into the program, what's unique about what is unique about CIP in the model is that you're with a peer group who have similar interests and are all kind of moving towards similar goals, to work on themselves, help, facilitate successful academic experiences, and help, move through all these different levels from, dependence to independence to interdependence. So by providing all these services under one roof, what we're able to do is provide a really individualized and comprehensive program that helps students kind of meet where they are and move forward in a way that's going to be productive for them. And we work really closely with families in that process, all, in the scope of about 20 to 30 hours a week with each student, plus structured weekend activities and all sorts of other aspects. So we provide that structure, and we provide that coaching, that facilitation, and that student-driven process to help students, realize their goals and dreams in a bigger, better way.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about your curriculum. What types of curriculum do you have, and what do you find to be the most effective?
Sure. So a lot of what we do is kind of facilitation. We're all facilitators in terms of working with students in real life settings. So some of the core aspects to CIP are, active learning, meaning doing things in real life and coaching and modeling. So that component of what we do is really big in many ways. The other aspects, we've developed a lot of our in-house curriculum. So all of our students are involved in individual and group modules in a variety of different areas, but we're working within domains of EF, life skills, academics. We use Peers, which is based on UCLA, the Peers Young Adult curriculum, which is really helpful. It talks about sexuality, social skills, and something new for this year coming up too is something we're pulling into CIP is the Facing Your Fears curriculum, which is kind of a group therapy focused on helping overcome anxiety, which we see is a bigger trend with youth in general right now that we're working with.
Well, this sounds amazing. I just want to ask, is there a specific type of student that this is perfect for? Is there a certain level of ability to do certain things that would qualify you uniquely for this program?
Yeah. So our students are formally diagnosed. We feel like that's important because, we're not a clinical setting in the sense of being able to diagnose people, and that would be something that comes pre-CIP. But sorry, can you rephrase the question again?
For parents who are listening and they're thinking, is this a good fit for my child who's about to become 18? Are there certain prerequisites? Like, do they have to have a certain level of functionality in order to come?
Yeah. So we typically will talk with families about is, cognitively and IQ wise, we want students to be capable of really taking the most out of this program. So because it's an educational program, first and foremost, we're really talking about like a full scale IQ of 80 and up is kind of our, wider benchmark. It's not that we wouldn't look more deeply because testing is always not the best reflection. But, beyond that, we're looking at the formal diagnosis piece of, an ASD or a learning difference diagnosis. We're looking at, academic achievement testing really being at least an 8th grade level. We can look lower in some cases depending on the students' and families' goals, but we're helping students access college, access employment. So really, cognitively, we're looking at average students in most cases who are motivated enough to want to be here and really participate. I know motivation's a big topic. And then psychologically, behaviorally, students that have stability. We see more and more mental health issues that come up and more testing that alludes to past situations. So we look really carefully at those things. But if a student has been hospitalized for certain reasons, and it's looking like they need more therapeutic supports first and foremost, like I said, we're more educationally focused, so we're looking for a student who's stable and can live semi-independently and can really take the biggest advantage out of what we're providing and grow and change. And, we provide the therapy aspect for the bumps that come along with having any kind of diagnosis and transitioning. So more mild anxiety, more mild depression, things like that.
We understand that CIP offers summer programs. Can you tell us about those?
Sure, yeah. The summer programs are great. So if you're a parent and you have a son or daughter in high school and you're trying to figure out the next steps, you know, there's this, everyone talks about the big leap from high school to college. Things change a lot. So for parents, being able to have their son or daughter stay on a college campus, have a roommate, sometimes it's their first time staying away from home, other times not. But what they're really getting is a good taste of what CIP's, you know, comprehensive curriculum offers. So we call it theme-based curriculum, where in the morning, you know, staying on campus, you're going to have breakfast together. A lot of it's group-based. You're going to talk about maybe teamwork, for instance, just as an easy example, in a module together in the morning. Then toward the afternoon, you're going to do a lot of fun social recreational opportunities to practice those skills with some mentors. It's a self-confidence building program. You make a lot of good social connections, and you get to stay on a campus and sort of feel, you know, what it's like in that next step of independence. The one big thing I like to tote hard with the summer programs is person-centered planning. So, you know, in that stage, it's really critical to start to create a vision of where you're going to go in your life. So we coach each individual student, you know, and say in 10 years, you know, where do you want to live? Do you want to drive a car? Do you want to be in a relationship? Do you want to have a college degree? What kind of work? And we let them blue sky think through that process. And then we backwards plan and break it down into manageable steps. And sometimes it shows that, hey, that's not a realistic goal or dream, but there's a piece of it that is something that is really powerful, that maybe is a motivator, a special interest. So they do that in using multimedia and PowerPoints. They present it to each other. Some will present to the families. They leave with a pretty good plan and a lot of great skills and experiences, and the families get to test the waters. You know, we say they get to get a taste of college life and experience independence, and the parents get a pretty detailed assessment too, so that they can better gauge what their next step might be with their kid. So all in all, 2-week program, 5 campuses across the U.S., college campuses, and just a really great experience for high school age students who are moving through and looking at their next steps.
Very cool. We've been talking about transitioning a lot in the last few weeks. What advice, when parents are looking for a transition program, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think because we've been around for so long, which is kind of an anomaly in many ways, and there's more and more services and supports. You know, parents are being really proactive, which is great, and many parents themselves are creating programs and new pathways toward, you know, college, independent living, all these pieces, which is great. But I think it's really hard for parents, first of all, to know that transition programs exist, and to then kind of understand goodness of fit is very challenging. So what I tell the families, most basic advice is go and look for yourself, visit, see things in person. That's the most valuable general advice, because you'll feel if it's a good fit. You'll feel if your student is going to have peers. You'll feel if the staff are motivated, engaged. You can ask as much detailed questions as you want. So, you know, everyone does have to visit, but the websites, it's hard to really research online what's what out there. So that's my biggest kernel of wisdom here.
I appreciate that. So having said all that and represented yourself as an expert, if people are wanting to look more into this program, where would they go to get information?
Yeah, just to our website, cipworldwide.org. You know, we provide a ton of resources on our email newsletter list. We're always publishing content and helpful articles. We also have a Autism and Learning Differences teaching toolkit that's available online. It's through Jessica Kingsley, but that's a 550-page manual focused on transition, which is a great resource too.
Wow.
Okay.
500 and that is
a lot of reading. Yeah.
That is a lot of reading. And so here's my. I'm sorry, Nancy, and I'm overstepping here, but for most of your parents, when they are bringing their, a young adult to you for this transition, how is this something that their insurance pays for? Is there funding for it? How are they usually funding this program?
Yeah, so it's different state by state. Primarily, a lot of it is private pay for families. So you have a tuition and housing component, and if you're going to college, there's a college tuition component. We have some families in some cases who have received school district funding. And then in California, we have regional center. We're vendored through regional center, through the regional center for both our Berkeley and Long Beach locations. So those programs for regional center clients who are approved, they would be funded for their tuition, which is kind of a big deal too.
Wonderful.
Okay. And once again, they can get in touch with you how?
CIPworldwide.org.
Okay.
Spectacular.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your program with us today, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for everything you're doing as well. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
What a great program.
Yeah, wonderful program.
Wonderful. So we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, Dana Meller from Pass the Big BCBA exam is going to be with us. That'll be fun.
Yeah, stay with
All right.
us.
Stick around.
Neurodiversity in parents. One big happy family? We hope so. Anyway, what is neurodiversity? Everybody's talking a lot about it these days. Neurodiversity means that there's a view that people with autism just have a different way of being, and they should be honored for that. And then parents oftentimes look at autism as a disability or a disorder, and that can create some conflict. We sometimes throw up our hands, neurodiversity or neurodiversity. There can actually be some issues around this that we need to think about together. First of all, neurodiversity could be positive because it can create more of a kind of a sense of acceptance in society. Yes, these people have autism, they're just different. It could possibly help create a sense of self-esteem that's improved in people with autism. They just realize, okay, I'm not damaged, I'm not bad, whatever, I'm just different. So that could be useful. On the downside, it could be an excuse to not give services to people with autism, to not have much empathy for their parents, and to not look at ways that they can be helped. And in many people that have autism, they do very well. Other people do not do well at all. They can't access services. They cannot enjoy their life. They're in pain. So it is important that we understand it's not just one issue. So how do we solve this when we look at neurodiversity? I think we have to look at it this way. It's kind of like when you have that big family dinner at Thanksgiving and everybody's around the table. You got your uncle, your aunt, your kids, your parents. Everyone has an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mesh. And I think the way that we need to think about this is we need to respect each other's opinion, because actually we need each other. We need to be allies on this. The outside world is a big place for people with autism spectrum disorders and their families. We have to remember, we're one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and we need to behave that way. We should respect each other, listen to each other, and we will all have a great time when it comes time to get together and celebrate the lives of people with autism.
Back. That was a quick 5 seconds. We were relaxing.
Very quick.
Okay, so I have been saying her name wrong. It's Donna Meller. And you say it Meller, Donna?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we are so excited to have her with us on the show today because there's so many. I finally got to meet her. I've heard about her from 5 different sources, I think, and not gotten a chance to meet her, but heard about this amazing person who has this amazing method that people who are studying to take the big BCBA exam should do this course that she has, right? Because she's part of Pass the Big ABA exam. So, Donna Meller, welcome to the show. Let's talk about what this is. What is Pass the Big ABA exam?
First of all, thank you for that lovely introduction. That's very sweet. I would like to add that I am a we consider to be really terrific clinicians who were having a really hard time passing the exam. And we were trying to sort of understand like what was not what was so difficult, because we knew firsthand how difficult it was, and we both had studied pretty hard for it. But you know what was going on, and Priya had an interesting experience because she was also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And so she had gone through different standardized exam experiences in addition to the board exam in applied behavior analysis. And we had obviously both taken other standardized tests. So we started talking about things that worked for us and the things that worked out there. And through this conversation, we learned that we both had very different studying styles and methods and different types of learning styles as well. You know, Priya is incredibly intelligent, had been in the field for a long time. So when she took the exam, she was already coming from a psychological background, and that was her whole life. My life was a little different. As you know, Shannon, I was an actress. So for me, even though I had a master's degree and I had a bachelor's degree and I had a lot of academic life, you know, I was still a little more right brain. Anyway, we sort of combined these differences and started to help out a couple of friends here and there. And from this experience, we were having lunch one day and said, you know, let's just put together a prep course that sort of amalgamates all these different processes that are out there, sort of a multimodal idea where you're being lectured, you're taking weekly mock exams, you're having reviews, you know, interactive reviews where someone, just as I'm speaking to you now, except this was all in person at the time even, is, you know, explaining the questions and saying, you know, the reason it's answer A is because of this, and the reason it's not B, C, and D is because of this, and then allowing students to ask questions and to sort of interact and say, but I thought it was this, and I thought it was that, and sort of putting all that together as well as giving them a study protocol, so how to study, an organized study method with sort of a curriculum like you do in school, which most of the people that we knew that were having a hard time were straight A students, so it wasn't like they weren't, you know, academically minded or something. So anyway, we put all this together, including, you know, using really big flashcards, which we thought would be used as visuals, trying to sort of promote the idea of stimulus salience, which is a behavioral term that essentially means that if something is more meaningful to you aesthetically, visually, you're going to remember it better or learn from it better. It's going to attract you. So put all these ideas of stimulus salience and interactive and structured curriculum together and put it on a website that actually I built on something called Vistaprint. It was a very ambitious moment in our lives because we didn't really know what we were in for. We were just like, you know, let's just try it. Let's just see what happens. And sure enough, the results came out. And as usual, there's panic in our community because, as the statistics show, a large number of people don't pass, and an even larger number if they've already sat for the exam. And so we got calls, and you know, we had no marketing, no advertising, just a dinky little website, but people found us. And that first cohort, we had about 20 students. It was all interactive, so we had a few in a conference room in West Los Angeles. We had another conference room in 3 parts of town. We did 3 parts of Los Angeles, essentially, or Southern California, I should say. And, you know, the method worked for a lot of those people. And, of course, it was so trial by error that we also learned a lot about, just that experience. And we added things and changed things. And from that initial process was born what is now our ABA exam prep workshop, which is either a 5 or 6 week workshop in which students are assigned a certain amount of studying material weekly. They take a mock exam. They meet every week of that 5 or 6 week experience with me or my partner Priya. We teach. We're the only instructors for the classes, and we go over all those mock exams just like we did in those live classes. And then during the week, again, they've got this structured protocol. Plus, we have access to the instructors, so they can email us and call us and ask us questions. We've just added this other edition where there's an additional office hour every week where they can where the instructor posts about an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting, and everybody can come and just ask random questions, less structured, so they can get rid of the panic of I don't understand this or I don't understand that. And the classes are extremely interactive, which is a lot harder to maintain now that we're online, because in person you can you get the feedback from the faces. People look confused or frustrated, so you kind of go, hey, you look confused. What can I do? Can I help explain it a little better? So now that they're bigger, because, in an online course we can have almost an unlimited amount of people, it's nice to, when the students interact with us as well, because it reminds us there's people there, and then they ask us questions. And that was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry about that, but
it was great.
Covered a lot of points we had.
It's a lot. It is a big program. We call it intensive and comprehensive, which those two adjectives sort of always surface when we're describing the program. And I'm sure I've left stuff out, but in any event, it was just it was taking some of those principles of applied behavior analysis and sort of shoving them into a 5-week or 6-week program.
So the course takes about 5 to 6 weeks from start to finish?
The courses take they're 5 to 6 weeks. Yes.
And one of the things that you've discovered through this is that you have some pretty awesome statistics about how successful you are at getting people to pass the exam. Talk to us a little bit about how successful you've been.
Well, that's such a funny subject. A lot of the success that I'm comfortable reporting, and I will give you statistics as well because our field is so data driven. But I want to disclaim that the statistics are extremely they're hard to count on because there's a lot of extraneous and confounding variables that we're just not able to control for. We collected data on a random sample of 500 students last year, and excuse me. And in that process, what we identified was that we had a pretty reliable pass rate. So the total cumulative for that sample of 500 students was, and it was, like I said, a random sample, was an 83% pass rate for everybody who took the workshop. Of those 500 students, 254 were first-time exam takers. And remember, I mentioned earlier, if you're taking the exam for the first time, statistically, you have a much higher chance of passing. Of those 254, we had an 89% pass rate for first-timers. And although that is a higher pass rate than the board, it's not like we're competing with the board. They're not a prep course.
Right.
And then for retakers, we had a 76% pass rate, which again also is statistically higher. Unfortunately, what's very difficult to generate is the specifics, and also just this data was the most arduous process. So because people don't respond to surveys, especially once they've passed, or the only people that do respond are people that passed, right? So we didn't want to put something out there that didn't, accurately and fairly represent what we were doing on both ends, on the helping people pass, and as well as the unsuccessful attempts that people experienced after our workshop. So we really didn't want to put anything out there that was a misrepresentation, because also we don't really have a way to measure the learner's behavior because so much of it is self-driven and self-motivated. So even though they come to class and they take these mock exams and we do get test scores from them, as far as how much they study, we don't know. How much they actually follow the protocols that we recommend, we can't know. And also, as far as, what their clinical backgrounds are, their academic backgrounds, there's just so many components that we don't have access to. So we don't make too big a deal about the pass rate. The thing I'd like to say to answer that question is our company has grown exponentially in a very short amount of time and continues to every cohort. And the reason is the word of mouth of our students. And so for me, that feedback, although anecdotal, I feel like is a better representation, a fairer and a more honest representation of the success of the effects of the protocols in the workshop. And of course, the other piece of it is that even those students that take our class and don't pass, many of them come back to us and send us, love letter emails saying, after this class, I really understand things so much better. I'm a better clinician. I'm aware of why I didn't pass because it was too ambitious an undertaking to jump in for just 5 weeks thinking I was going to be able to, acquire fluency in this huge amount of material in that short period of time, So for that reason as well, I feel comfortable in saying we do a lot of good for a lot of people. And of course, I love to be more data-driven than that, but it's dangerous territory.
I understand. I didn't mean to tread into that territory, but thank you for telling us as much as you did. But I think the biggest thing is for people who are like, okay, this is exactly what I need, where do they go?
Okay, so lots of places to go. They can go on our website, and that's lots of information, very comprehensive, which is passthebigabaexam.com. Thank you for putting it on the screen. And our phone number is there and everything. We have an incredible staff of people that are happy to talk to you and answer your questions. If you feel like you want to talk to me or Priya, because we're both BCBAs and you just want advice, and even just to sort of figure out if this is the process for you, because obviously any process is not for everybody. Just give us a call or send us an email, and we're happy to chat and give you more info.
Wonderful.
Okay, great.
So if we have 2 more minutes with you, I just got to say, how did you go from being a Broadway performer star, and we see the Les Mis, I said before, you're an actress and done many things, and I was saying to Nancy, she was just in a little show called Les Mis, right?
On Broadway.
On Broadway, no kidding. But how did you go from that to being a BCBA?
I don't know. I don't know. It was an interesting experience. While I was doing Les Mis, it was sort of a luxurious job because it's a stable job as an actor, which you don't have a lot. Those opportunities are far and few. But I went to graduate school. I did not study applied behavior analysis. I fell into it years later. But I was doing graduate school during the day, performing at night. A 2-year master's took me about 10 years because I took a lot of breaks to work and act. And then I came back to Los Angeles after 9/11. I'm from here, met a friend from childhood who had started a company, and somehow that piqued my interest. I knew nothing about it except the sort of superficial stuff that's covered in graduate school, and that was it. I mean, I studied psychology, so I wasn't unfamiliar, but I didn't have practical experience, and I started on the front lines like most of us, and as the more that my career progressed, the more I realized this is something I'm really interested in, and one thing led to another, and about 16 or 17 years later, here I am.
Wow.
Well, good for we're very
good
fortunate.
For us.
Yeah,
good for us.
to have you in the
is
field.
what that is. Yes, and you're obviously you have such a light about you in everything that you do, and bringing that to helping people pass this test is just an amazing thing. I have to say that there are so many people at CARD who say such wonderful things about you behind your back and about this course.
That's how I like it.
They speak so highly of you that when I finally got to meet you, I was like, oh, you're the woman that they keep talking about and how amazing you are in prepping people for this test. But not just that, but how amazing you are. So we want to thank you for all the work that you've been doing, because heaven knows the world needs more BCBAs.
We're trying. We sure do need more.
I appreciate that more than you know.
Thank you so much,
So
Donna.
Passthebigabaexam.com. You guys go there, check it out. It is the thing that will help you to get this done. If you know somebody who is getting ready to take the exam, and I know if you push them on over there, because this will save time and money by taking this course. Thank you so much, Donna, for being with us.
Thank you, Donna.
For having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And I'm telling you guys, you have to Google her,
right,
and see her sing, and it will send shivers down your spine. She's the most fabulous performer.
So she's multi-talented.
Multi-talented. Amazing.
Okay.
You can see she's just that
right.
kind of open energy
right.
that, and talking about teaching people in a way that gets their interest. I mean, hello.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She is.
So pass the big
ABA exam.com.
Heaven knows.
Passthebigabaexam.com.
Okay, so check it out, you guys, because it's really, truly fabulous. All right. We have like a minute and a half, so I wanted to take just a minute and talk about
tomorrow's show.
Yes, I do, and you got to talk about the run, right?
Yes.
So you have the run coming. You talk about that first, and then I'll
Okay, we
tease
have
tomorrow.
our big Actor Day for Military Families, Autism Care Today for Military Families run and festival coming up on April 20th.
Yes.
And we want everybody to go to our website at act-aday.org and get involved with that.
And keep in mind that it's in the most beautiful place on the face of the earth at Tecolote
Shores, San Diego.
So beautiful. But if you can't be there, because we can't all be in all places at the same time, right? You still can run virtually.
You can run virtually and you can support a team.
Exactly. So you start a team and you have people make donations and tell them what that money donated goes towards.
It goes to military families with children with autism because they have some very special challenges that we decided to focus on.
We know that the prevalence in military families for some reason is higher. And we know that they face unique challenges because they have to move sometimes every 2 years.
On average, every 2 years. That's the average for a military family.
Imagine, you guys, you know, you get on the waiting list and you're just inching your way to the top of the list. You start your services and then it's time to move again.
No, it's just really difficult.
Or imagine that mom or dad or both of them are deployed for a period of time and the stress that is. We need to do right by our military families and our military families that have autism in their families. So this is a great way to do that. You can run virtually and it's a fabulous thing to do. Have a little fundraiser and, you know, don't get caught up in the, well, I don't know if my friends will donate, right? If you end up running virtually or otherwise, and if you raise $10, that $10 along with my $10 and somebody else's $10 is the difference in a person's life.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So make sure that you guys, where do they go? What website?
They go to act-aday.org.
Okay. And get ready for that. But if you can be there in person, it's a really fun time. Now, tomorrow on the show, we've got a big show. We've got an autism expert who's going to be here to answer some of your questions. But we have some powerhouse guests. We have a mom and her daughter that are going to be on the show, and I'm going to let them talk more about themselves. But this is a mom and a 12-year-old daughter who is just doing amazing things.
What are they doing?
Well, she is a budding, I think, YouTube star.
Okay.
And she is leading a life that is a really cool thing that I think people are going to get really excited about.
Okay.
I want her to talk about herself, so I don't want to tease too much.
Okay.
But you're going to love meeting this young woman. And then I have a gentleman who's going to be on the show who's part of an organization called the SIG, which is a special interest group that's part of ABAI. So it's mainly practitioners that have a special interest group for autism, and they make recommendations to ABAI, which those are the BCBAs. We just talked about the Board Certified Behavior Analysts. And he's going to talk about some of the different things that they're doing, and I think you're going to find it really interesting. He is a very dynamic young man. Justin Levy, I believe, is his last name. So all of that is going to be happening tomorrow, plus we'll do our mindfulness moment and maybe an autism in the classroom moment. So,
all right. Sounds like a big show.
It is a big show, and now we've gone over time, but it was worth it. So I'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.